Hey there, crewmates. Gabe from Nexus Core here with another deck profile, and I am beyond excited to go over this one with you. So for those of you who don't know, the Sakura Kingdom YouTube channel, whose link will be in the description, has been hosting weekly tournaments on the One Piece Discord server, which will also be in the description. And last night, I finally got the chance to participate in one of the tournaments, and I was able to come in second with it, going 3-1 at the end of the Swiss round, so I wanted to go over the deck that I decided to bring with it because I'm pretty proud of what happened, and the deck performed pretty well, so let's just get started right on in with it. So I obviously brought my kid deck to it, but if you watched my other kid profile, I have made quite a few changes to it. So if you're new to the channel, Kid is active during the main phase. You can pay 3 and discard a card to stand him, and this is a ability that frankly I keep underestimating and just need to stop doing that. The amount of times pumping him up and attacking twice can win games is absurd. I won my first round match just by making him a 12,000 beater with 7 dot and then standing him again with the last 3. Just an absolutely a powerful ability that I really overlooked if you've been here at the channel with for a long time. Next, another obvious culprit is going to be Jewelry Bonnie, who is, again, if you haven't seen any green deck profile, is a 1/1000 counter, whose effect is during the main phase you can pay 1, check the top 5 for any Supernova, add it to your hand, and put the rest at the bottom of the deck in any order. So it is just another piece of consistency. It is free advantage. You are able to get a lot of your core pieces out of it. Phenomenal card. And next, the first noticeable change from the last time I did this deck profile, I am running Kozuki Momonosuke. So the last profile that I did was pure Supernova. I decided to go in a more hybrid direction and run a Supernova Wano green build. So Momo is word for word the exact same card as Bonnie, except he has 0 power instead of 1000, and he checks the top 5 for a Wano country card and not Supernova, obviously. The reason I decided to take the deck in this direction is because the deck can generate so much advantage with both Bonnie and Momo, and that really is how the deck wins. Kid, the 8-drop, for those of you who are familiar, is a very strong, grindy deck that is just hard to overcome. But if you're playing the deck and you either don't have the resources to keep 8-drop Kid alive, or you've been keeping him alive but you can't really get more out of it, the deck can lose steam, and then once you lose Kid in that situation, you can't really do anything. So adding Momo doesn't just add another card that you can get advantage with in the early game, but it gives you another way of getting more and more cards every single turn as the game progresses, so you never actually run out of anything once your Kid wall is set up. So I'm actually very happy going in this direction. Running both Wano and Supernova in the green build has been performing quite well. Next, we are running 4 copies of Bej. It's a 1/1 blocker, very simple, easy to play, and blocking is good. Next is Killer, who is a 2/2 with counter 1000, who is also a blocker. Don 1 on block. If you have 3 or more characters, you draw 1. A lot of the characters in this are low to the ground, or the higher costed cards are hard to get rid of, so they will stay. Having that board is quite easy. And a very fun niche thing is because Bonnie and Momo are so weak in power, people will attack into them with their lower costed characters. So you can block with Killer and use something like Waterfall to stand Killer. And because Killer's effect is on block and not once per turn, because he blocks twice, you could potentially get 2 draws out of that on top of 2 blocks, which it's a very niche situation because you need to be blocking a character with 3,000 or less power, but it has come up, and when it does, it feels really good. Next, another noticeable change, I am now running 3 copies of Cat Viper. I'm only running 3 due to space. He is a 2/3 with counter 1000, whose effect is on play rest an opponent's character with a cost of 3 or less. So this is pretty good in the early game. Because red is so prevalent, tapping down their key low-cost cards before they can do anything is very helpful. The deck obviously runs a lot of low-cost cards, so if your opponent is playing Robin, being able to tap Robin and then attack into her is very useful, but other obvious ones like the Nami that lets you attach Rested Dawn, really any low-cost character that you just want to get rid of because red, you just don't want them to have a board. So being able to keep your opponent tapped down really, really is helpful, especially in the red game. But a lot of the time, though, it really helps that he's a Wano attribute, so he's searchable off of Momo. And he has the counter, too, so solid card. Next is a Pooh, who's a 2/3 counter 2000. Dawn 1 when attacking rest an opponent's Dawn. This literally never comes up. It is only because he's a 2000 counter that I'm running him. The moment we get another green Supernova with a counter 2000, he's probably getting dropped for that. Next is another Wano character who is Izo, who is a 3/3 with counter 2000, whose effect is on play rest an opponent's character with cost 4 or less. He is just an upgraded Cat Viper. Again, 2000 counter is great and primarily what we're here for, but tapping things of cost 4 or less definitely comes up, so he's a great card. Next, again, due to space, we're only running 3 copies of Killer, who is a 3/3 with counter 1000, whose trigger is you can play this card, and on play, KO an opponent's rested character with a cost of 3 or less. So this is a solid ability. I'm only running it at 3 because the 3 or less thing is helpful, but it is a bit niche. It doesn't really do a whole lot against purple or blue. And it also, because it requires a setup of it being rested already, it's hard to be proactive with it unless you have Cat Viper, and even then Cat Viper and Killer requires 5 Dawns, so it is a bit of an investment, but it's still a great effect if your opponent has blockers set up and they have like Bonnie, or if you're in the mirror match and you can't hit Bonnie because they have Kid up, being able to at least get rid of something that will be KO'd anyways is always really good. I just don't feel like I need more than 3. This is because I am running Wano cards, you need to run a decent amount so Momo doesn't whiff. So if I wasn't playing the Wano, I would definitely run this like in the other profile at 4. But in 3, it's honestly fine. I haven't really missed it or felt like I needed more. But Killer's a solid card. Next, another fantastic addition is Raizo, who is a cost 3, 4000 slash attribute. Counter 1000 when attacking once per turn. If you have 2 or more rested characters, draw 1. So, because Bonnie and Momo rest themselves, proccing his ability is beyond easy. Earlier on in the other deck, because we only ran Bonnie, it would be a little harder because you would have to play Raizo and need to attack with something before him. But now you can play Raizo once you're at 3 Dawn, and then next turn play Bonnie or Momo, rest them during the main phase, then attack with Raizo after, because it only needs 2 rested characters, not 1. So, there are just multiple avenues for 2-card combos to go +2 every turn, which is just very, very good, especially in a wall deck like Kid. So Raizo is phenomenal. He's also a 3 cost, so he's cheatable out with the Big Daddy Kid himself. Next, we are running 4 copies of Basil Hawkins, a 5/6 slash attribute, Dawn 1 once per turn. During your turn, if it battles an opponent's character, you can set it as active. Fantastic for the restand. And this was definitely something that came up in a lot of my matches. It's great against any blue deck because they're going to have either a lot of blockers, or if it's Doflamingo, they're going to be playing things as rest. It is fantastic in the mirror match because it is its own answer to the 8-drop Kid and any established board. It's great against red to clean up gummy board states when your opponent has a bunch of guys. So Hawkins is absolutely fantastic. I don't want to cut him. I had one game that was very uncomfortable because by turn 3 or 4, I had drawn 3 copies of him. And that's bad, not because it's Hawkins, but because Hawkins doesn't have a counter. It could have been anything without a counter, and it would have been uncomfortable. But that really is any card game. There is just the luck of the draw. Sometimes these things happen. And the advantage you can get from a successful Hawkins is so good that I really don't want him running anything less. Like, decks will run outs to Hawkins before he starts attacking, like Mihawk and 7 Doflamingo in blue. Anything that can kill a 5-cost card, like Jet Pistol or Kaido, the 9-drop. So there are so many ways that people will want to get rid of this, but if he sticks, he is great to stick. So I really like Hawkins in this. Next, we have decided to run 2 copies of the 7-drop kid. I think this is another recent change from the last profile, who is a 7/7 special attribute, who is a blocker, and his effect is Dawn 1. At the end of your turn, you can set him as active. He is a fantastic blocker that can hit for big numbers and set himself as active. You aren't multi-attacking with him, you're just attacking with him once, but then he activates himself and you can block again with 7 cost, and then again you have things like Paradise Waterfall that makes him a 9k restanding blocker. So, love Kid. I'm only running him at 2 because I'm running a lot of the 8 Kid, and because of Hawkins 2, the deck can have a very high Dawn curve, and I don't want to run more than that to cause bricks. And Kid is also a decent backup if I'm missing the 8 Kid, but because of how the cost works, it can be a bit awkward to set things up, so I really don't feel like I need more copies of him, so I think 2 is a good number. Lastly, we are running 4 copies of the big boy himself, 8 Kid, who is an 8/8 special attribute. Dawn 1 during your opponent's turn. Your opponent can't attack anything other than him if he is rest. And during the main phase, you can rest him to play a card of cost 3 or less from your hand for free. Fantastic. Incredible. No notes. This is... Again, I stand by it, maybe the single most powerful individual card in the game. I love him with all of my heart. He is so good. He is so good. This is a fantastic card. Please, English Bandai, don't errata. Kid's fine. He's totally fine, I promise. But there really is nothing to say that if you're in any way in the One Piece community that hasn't been said before. He has an 8,000 base, so with counters is a non-issue. Your opponent can't really attack blockers that are active, so blocking with them means he has extra protection. Honestly, I can see a world where once Green gets more blockers as the game develops, some things are cut just to get more blockers for him. This is such an insane card. I love it. And lastly, onto the events. We're running 4 copies of Punk Gibson. Your leader or one character gets 4,000 power, and then you rest an opponent's character of 4,000 or less, and its trigger is to rest one of your opponent's characters. That trigger has saved my life before, and there is no... I can't run less than 4 of this thing. It's just so good as well. It is with an event that gives 4,000 power, so making Kid 12k is just so good, and being able to tap down a 4 cost means that if your opponent has a blocker like Hancock or Doflamingo in blue, or like Chopper or Jinbei in red, or Bartolomeo as well, in the mirror match, you got things like Bej and Killer. There are so many good cards that you want to tap down, or if you know your opponent is going to do everything they can to kill Kid, being able to tap down one of their potential attackers. Just a phenomenal card all around. Lastly, again, due to space, we are only running 2 copies of Paradise Waterfall. Counter 1, your leader or character gets 2,000, then set a character as active. So the ideal play is having 7 cost Kid on, and then using this because this makes Kid a 9,000, so it's probably not going to die, and then you can reuse the block. There are also the fringe benefits that I mentioned, like you can restand Killer for the draw. If your opponent is trying to attack into Hawkins, being able to set him as active so your opponent can't attack him, and also him having 8,000 will increase the chances of him being alive. Keeping any thing that is you don't want to die active is really good. I also forgot to mention its trigger. KO your opponent's rested character with a cost of 4 or less. That never came up, but I'd rather have it and not use it I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So that's totally fine. Also, part of why I'm comfortable with running 2 waterfalls is that this is a pretty heavy investment creature deck, so I really don't want many events, and it's also searchable off of Momo, so it's still more consistent than the waterfall in my other profile. So a lot of the things with this deck are definitely due to space. It is a very, very tight deck. I really don't know what else really would warrant change. I did have games that bricked. That does happen, especially in the early stages of a game where there aren't many consistency-related cards, so I can't really complain about that. So overall, the deck performed very, very well. So I don't think there are really any changes worth making until we get set 2. I don't think any of the promos really need it. I have considered playing the double attack kid just to give more pressure, but this is just not a high aggro deck, and I don't like the double attack on the low powered characters, so I don't think it's necessary. Same with Yamato. There aren't really many other Wano cards I would want to run, so I think as the game goes on and we get more cards, we are probably gonna shift away from this build, because once we get more Wano cards, I think a Wano specific deck will be more viable, and once we get more Supernovas, there's going to be more things I'm going to want to search with Bonnie and less with Momo. So I can imagine a world where this deck gets aged out within like 1, 2, maybe 3 sets, depending on what green gets. But I think for now, because of how early days we are with One Piece, we are 1 set, 5 starter decks and promos into it thus far. There aren't really many cards that I'm like, oh, this needs to be in my deck. So I think running like this is actually probably for me the right way to go in the early game. I don't even feel like I'm missing anything with the 5-drop Law. There are good on-play effects, but adding another 5 cost to the list I don't think is really necessary. And especially the amount of advantage we can generate from having Momo is so good. If you play pure Supernova Kid, I've had moments where I didn't see Kid, I didn't see Hawkins, I didn't see Bonnie, and I wasn't accomplishing anything. This way I at least have Momo to at least get me some other resources. So I really like this deck. You can generate a ton of advantage. If you have Kid on board and also have Raizo and either Momo or Bonnie, you're just not going to lose. That's like, unless your opponent has board wipe Kaido, you just do not lose. Bonnie and Raizo in that situation, as I said, are a +2. You're drawing a card, so you're going +3 every single turn, and going +3 while you have Kid on board, your opponent can't do anything, especially if the cards you're going into are like Gibson, which is a 4,000 shield, or any blocker. So your opponent has to put in so much more effort just to get rid of it, and you just get so many resources. I had games last night where I had an opponent that had like 3 in hand and 2 on board, and I had like 12 cards in my hand. So this deck, when it snowballs, there is just nothing your opponent can do. And it can do that pretty consistently because of how many draw cards there are. So I think that's gonna wrap it up. Again, my other Kid profile is up, so I go into a bit more depth with the Supernova stuff. A lot of the Wano cards are pretty simple, and I ran some of them in the other profile anyways. It really was just the memo for consistency. And yeah, I think that wraps it up. This deck is super fun. I definitely recommend trying it out for yourself if you like decks that can generate advantage. I want to give another big thank you to the Sakura Kingdom channel for hosting these tournaments every week. And I want to give a big shout out to the Moonmen TCG. I had the chance to play with them in the tournament, and they were really cool. Got the chance to just go over a lot of like good shop talk about the game and had some fun games. So I really want to thank everybody that I played with and against. And if you aren't in the One Piece Discord, I definitely think you should join it. The link will be in the description. And then you'll see me there, and maybe we can get in some games on Untap or in one of the tournaments at some point. So, again, I would like to thank everybody for watching, and I will see you in the next video.